Today, I want to talk about something different than what I normally talk about. Today, I want to talk about learning to love oneself. And I've grown and learned to love and accept every part of me, not just as a transgendered woman, not just as a black woman, but also as a black person and a person of color. I've learned to love myself. It wasn't an easy road where I am now. When I was younger, I wanted to look more like my paternal side of the family. I look more like my maternal side of the family. I look more like my mother's father's side of the family. I don't look like my mother's side of the family. They have smaller nose but darker skin. And I look more like my mother's father's side of the family. I wanted to look like my paternal side of the family. I wanted to look like my father's side of the family, especially when you start getting to the great grandparents, the lighter they get. And some of them, I remember my grandmother used to tell me, oh, a lot of the cousins, they're white. And it's true. A lot of my paternal side, a lot of that side are white, very light, they are either light or white. They could pass for white. And I wanted to look like that. I wanted to have my father's hair because my father has very loose hair. And it's not that I thought that my mother's side was not attractive, but to me, my idea of beauty at the time was, you know, you had to have either straight hair or really loose, or you had to be as white looking as possible, and I wanted to look like my paternal side. I remember one time my aunt, my mother's sister was going through my hair and to see if what they call pretty hair. And I know she wasn't trying to be malicious or anything. And she was looking through my hair and she's like, "Oh, you have your, see if I have my father's hair. Oh, you got a little bit." I didn't really inherit it too much from my father's side of the family, except for around the eyes a little and the really thick hair, because my father has really, really thick hair, and that side of the family, I have a lot of thick, long hair, and I have thick hair, and I can grow my hair, and I've grown my hair, and, thick hair. I had so much feelings about what it meant to be beautiful. You know, the only thing I kind of like was my nose, because my family, especially my maternal side, they'd be like, "Oh, you got cute. Your nose is small. Your nose is small." And it wasn't until I went to school one day. I went to a school, and there was this kid at that school named Josh. And he said to me, "Did you have a nose job?" I'm like, "No." He said to me, "You have a small nose for a black person." As ignorant as he was, that did something to me. Like, oh, I have a small nose. My family was right. I have a small nose, even though I don't think I really have a small nose. But to hear it from him, someone who, not related to me, and someone who was not a person of color, it did something to me. As ignorant as he was, it made me like, oh, there were so many feelings in me when I was younger, and there was one time where I went to the beach with my cousin, and this is not the first time this has happened. My cousin, he's got a really broad nose, and he's much darker than me. We went to the beach, and he was on the beach out in the sun, and my aunt said, stay out of the sun. You're already dark. You don't want to get any darker. And this is not the first time they have said that to him. That's probably why he has been with non-black people since then. Because I remember, and to be honest, when I would be around him, I would, be like, oh, I'm the browner one, even though I'm not that brown, but compared to him, I am, and I thought of myself as, oh, I'm browner, I'm not as dark as you. But I never said that to him. I never treated him any different. But I always, inside of me, felt like, oh yeah, I'm browner. And at the same time, wishing and feeling like I want to look, I wish that I looked more like my father. And also I remember meeting my father's childhood friend, and my father's childhood friend said to me, I wouldn't believe that you two are related, because it's true. I look nothing like my father. Not really. We don't have the same texture. We don't hair texture. We don't have the same. I remember one time I asked my father, how come, I was looking at my father in the kitchen one day, and I said, how come I don't have your hair or anything like that? And he said to me, I have too much of my mother's genes. And that has stuck with me. That has really stuck with me. You know, when he said, you have too much of your mother in you. And, that I've grown so much. I remember too also, a black person said this to me, a black guy said this to me, your views on black people are warped. You know, and it possibly, yes, it probably was. I, for most of I lived in an all white neighborhood, for a long time. I went to an all white school. I was in an all white school for, a while. And, I was surrounded by white. I didn't have any friends of color. I didn't have any friends who were not, of any other race but white, and I had caretaker, who was white, so my views was probably, it probably was, because yeah, I was kind of ignorant to some degree, yes. But it wasn't until I started to get older and read and look at other people who, I've learned from, who have taught me, what? Beauty doesn't mean you have to have straight hair or really loose texture or, look like white from my father's side of the family or, nothing like that. I am beautiful just the way that I am. And I never really thought that way, even though when I was younger, I had all these guys, boys would come around and stuff like that. But I didn't feel it, I didn't see, because I wasn't looking white. I wasn't looking brown like some of the other ones. I didn't have the hair texture like my father, and I didn't even have the small lips like my mother's side, So I have grown. You know what? I love my full lips. I love my skin tone. I love my hair. I have loved my hair. It's kind of funny. It was about a few months ago when I was with one of my aunts, and I had my hair pulled back, and my maternal aunt, you know, who've got like some issues with her hair, and she said to me, she's touching my hair, and she's like, oh, I wish I have your hair. I wish I have your hair. And for the first time in my life, I'm hearing this from this particular aunt. And I'm like, wow, she said that. You know, she said, I wish I have your hair. She has never said that to me, and that made me felt good. Like, my hair is not my father's hair texture, and I do have long hair, and, but I was just sitting there, on my grandparents' veranda, and she just touched my hair and just felt it, and she says, boy, I wish I have your hair. And I just looked at her like, wow, wow, she's never said that to me before, and it made me feel good. Like, you know, I have accepted, you know what? I am dark. I have full lips, a button nose, thick hair. It's not straight. I used to straighten my hair all the time. I don't anymore. I have dark skin, button nose, full lips, thick, curly hair, and that's okay, And maybe if I came out looking more like my father's side of the family, I probably would have came out, being ignorant and just feeling like, I'm all that because, of the way that I look. But, there's a reason why that I came out the way that I look, and that's okay. That's okay. I love it. I love me. And, I've learned to surround myself with beauty, you know, dark, natural, full lips, dark tones. I have surrounded myself in my home. So when you come to my home, you're going to see dark, beautiful people with different textures, hair, and, representation. And I've surrounded myself with that. I have learned to love every single features on me. As I said, it wasn't easy where I am now, but I have learned to. I did not get the straight nose like, you know, that side. I didn't get the brown or the light or the white. I didn't get the hair to, you know, but that's okay. That's okay. I came out the way that I looked. And, you know, I hope too that my cousin that has had, especially when we're younger, people tell him to stay out of the sun because he's too dark. And I hope he knows that, there's nothing wrong with him. And, I hope that he understands that, don't rush to other races because you are feeling certain ways about yourself. And I didn't treat him any differently, even though he's darker than me with a broader nose and much fuller lips and, have more Afrocentric, or whatever people want to call look. He's my cousin and I love him. And, I hope that he has grown to also love himself as a black man, a black person, a person of color, So for me, I make sure that I've surrounded myself and learn and look at people and see and want to see people that look like me with my features, my texture, and things like that. And you know, I think it's important that there are representation and, you know, I know in this world, like, people are going to treat me, oh, you are a dark skinned person of color and, you are a dark skinned black woman. And, I've grown to accept that and love that. And you know what? my life, would it have been any better looking like some of my other friends? No, I don't think it, for maybe just a little, but in the long run, probably not. But that's all I wanted to talk about today. And thank you so much for listening. And, for those who are having a hard time learning to love oneself, you have to look yourself in the mirror and learn to love every part, and accept every part of yourself because, the Creator made you the way you look. And would that be better because you are a certain way? No. Because you could be a certain way and still not liking certain things about yourself. So, I'm, yeah, and as I said, like, I no longer, sit and like, oh, geez, why didn't I have hair like my father? Why didn't I come out looking like some of his family members, all white, white? Why didn't I, you know, I've passed that. I have passed that long time ago, and I have loved me now. Love me. Hey, I'm a dark-skinned black woman, and with full lips, button nose, and thick, beautiful hair, long hair, and yeah, that's just me.